President Trump saying that he will not budge on his immigration policy, asking ICE to go ahead and make operations a priority in blue sanctuary cities, posting this: "We must expand efforts to detain and deport illegal aliens in America's largest cities, such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. These and other such cities are the core of the Democratic power center." Leaders of those cities have vowed to resist Trump's deportation efforts, and over the weekend we saw violent protests breaking out in places like Los Angeles and elsewhere on the West Coast, protesting ICE enforcement raids. Kelly McEnany, co-host of Outnumbered, with us on a Monday morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I wasn't quite sure where he was on this. On Thursday, it seemed like back off the hotel employees, back off the people working on farms, and then last night we came out with this post which seemed to counter that. What do you think we are?
I think he's still where he was last week about not engaging in this work enforcement aggressively. Because if you read the post, he says expand in large cities, and he specifically names the cities, which don't happen to be very rural cities. When you look at his gut, he did an interview with Fox Noticias and was confronted with a man who'd been in the country 20 years, Mexican man, U.S. citizen children, saying he wanted to stay here. He was played the soundbite. His response to that was, "I look at this man, I say this is a guy we want to keep. I will probably take heat for saying it." His DHS sent out directions. There was an internal email, the New York Times reported on it, saying lay off the work enforcement. And DHS confirmed that that email was legitimate and existed. I think his gut is there. I think he wants to honor what he's told his base, but that doesn't necessarily preclude being smart in the deportation decision making.
I mean, they're trying to hit a certain number, and I think they're having a hard time hitting the number. So then you get the new push, then I guess to look at, and it's not necessarily just blue cities. It just so happens that those cities are ruled by Democrats, and they have been for years.
That's right. And we know Stephen Miller, there was reporting he wanted it to be 3,000 a day that are deported. DHS aggressively expanded their efforts. They were hitting the 2,000 mark. So there is this push-pull. And then the reporting that Brooke Rollins, the U.S. Ag Secretary, came to him and said, hey, you've got to lay off. You know, we've got to also make good with our farmers. So there's this tension. I think it's very evident. It's shown in the reporting. But I think he's going to ultimately come down on the side of reason, which, by the way, polling shows 70% of people want some immigrants deported, but want to make room for those who are contributing to society.
Okay, we'll watch where that goes. In the meantime, there seems to be a battle royale between the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and the White House and what they're doing. Here's Karen Bass saying the military should not be here. Watch.
I do want to dispel the notion that the military is here. We don't want them here. They don't need to be here. Our local law enforcement have complete control of this situation. I flew over each one of them, and they were overwhelmingly peaceful. It's not shocking that at the end of a protest that you're going to have some confrontation. Of course, I wish there was none at all.
So I don't see the White House backing down on this. Where do you see this headed?
Yeah, I don't see them backing down. And look, it's easy to say we don't need the military or the National Guard, but the fact is they were there. You can't do a counterfactual of what would have happened if they were not there. You still saw a dozen deputies injured, 500 arrests, high-grade pyrotechnics being thrown. You know, the LAPD has said there are antagonists that come out at night. It's not every protester who's being violent, but there are anarchists that come out at night. He has come out and said that, Jim McDonnell, and said there's internal sophisticated communications. This is something we saw when I was in the White House in Portland, the same activity. So you can't say you don't need the National Guard. Who knows what would have happened? We saw what happened when the National Guard wasn't there in the chop zone where 2 were killed, where David Dorn was killed out in Missouri. So it's easy to say that, but you benefited from the presence of the National Guard.
The Media Research Center shows that between June 7th and 11th, CNN and MSNBC had a reference to the protests as peaceful 211 times, as if they were trying to really drive that point home.
Yeah, and I actually saw this pivot in real time where it was peaceful, 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 and then on that Sunday afternoon, the cars were burning. There were scooters being tossed onto the hoods of police cars, and all of a sudden that peaceful adjective made its way out of the coverage, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
And Trump said at one point if the military wasn't there, that the place would have burned down or would have been looted. And we did see some of that looting. You're exactly right about that. Kaylee, we'll see what happens this week. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
See you at noon.
See you at noon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.